Daat Elokim as a Hakdam to Chachmas Emes. We are holding Daf Chavtes in the Iris of the Chayim. Just to make a sikum as to where we're holding, we explained before about the Iris of the Asnaim, because we explained that just to start again, you have the highest thing in the Mokum Ponai is Adam Kadmain, remember, and that's Mislavish the Kav of the Orein Seif Gufa, because remember the Orein Seif comes in Idea the Kav, and the first the Olam of the Nevroim, if you will be Adam Kadmain, and that being, and all the other Olams will be Nisasif off of Adam Kadmain, including Olam Atzilus, where Kav Yochel, where our Gili Alakus is, because in Zer Ampim of Atzilus, that is Havaya, which Bezos Hashem Yisbarach we'll get to when we get there. But there are of course Olamas higher than that, because the Gili of Elikus that we have is not the last Gili of Elikus, not the highest Gili. In fact, it's Lahadol, it's very low down in the system, because all of this is Elikus, but Kaviyachol Kosh Baruch has to be Mitzamsim himself to the point where we can be Makabel. And just Der Chag, when he says he has to, he doesn't have to do anything. This is just the system by which Kifiyah, the Kabbalah we have from the Arizal, this is the way that he did it. Okay, but anyways, in Olam Atzilus, where the Gili of Elikus will be, there are shroshim for that, and the shroshim for that system is a system we know, which we're learning now, called Achab, which is the system of Oizen, Chayim, and Peh. We've already explained the iris of the Oizen. The iris of the Aznaim are iris that come out of the right and left ear, Kaviyachov Adam Kadman, because we're using Tzuras Adam to be nimshal these things, because again, we have to come on to Tzuras Adam, or to Tzuras Oisius, or Tzuras Shemus, in order to be nimshal the Dvar Melyonim, even though, of course, we realize there's no such thing as Adam there, and there's no such thing as Oisius there, but of course, these things do exist. It's a nomenclature that we're giving it, because so there is something called Adam Kadman. What Adam Kadman is Be'etzim is not really sure to understand, but Be'etzim it does exist. Again, like a blind man who knows that there's different colors, like he's heard there's something called red, he's heard there's something called blue, but he doesn't really understand what they are. But he knows there's something called red and there's something called blue, and they have different functions, and they look differently, even though he himself wouldn't be able to be margish that. Okay, we explained that the Shem Havai, which is the Shem Ha'etzim, is split into four major miluyim, called Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ben. The Ab is going to be going the entire length of Adam Kadman, all the way from the Golgalta, from the top, all the way down to the Raglayim. But from the Oizen Ulamata, we say it's mislavish, or covered over by the Sag. And then the Sag itself is going to go all the way down from the Aznaim, all the way down to the Raglayim also. But we say that from the top of Ulamata is going to be mislavish, or covered over by the iris of Ma and Ben. Now, each of these Absag Ma'abens, each of these Miluyim, are correspond to Yud, K, Vav, and K of a total Havaya. But if we were to analyze each of these Absag Ma'abens mitzad themselves, they themselves would have their own miniature Havaya, because again, the general rule being Kol Ma Sheish B'Chal Yesh B'Prat. So if we analyze anything mitzad itself, it has the entire Klal within it. Mashiach, if we look at it mitzad the higher Klal, it's only a Prat. Different terms of madrigas of hierarchy, if you will. So therefore, in the Ab itself, there's going to be an Ab Sag Ma Ben of Ab. Within the Sag, there's going to be an Ab Sag Ma Ben of Sag. And the same thing with the Ma and Ben. Hakfloli, there'll be an Ab Sag Ma Ben of Ma and Ab Sag Ma Ben of Ben. Now, the Rav explains, or the Machaber here, quoting the Rav, explains that the iris of Ab we're not going to deal with, because they're too high up. They're shirish, because Ab parallels the Yud Shemavai, which is the Makif Chaya. And remember, Makifim we really do not have a Hasaga to, because remember, in terms of the 5 levels of the Neshama, the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and the Yechida, the Chaya corresponds to the level of the Ab, the Neshama is the level of the Sag, the Ruach is the level of the Ma, and the Nefesh is the level of the Ben. So the level of the Chai is not really understandable. Remember, because that's the whole inyan of a Makif. It's a Hasaga. It's something that we can reach, but it's not something that we have right now. So ergo, the Rav doesn't want to discuss it. So therefore, he starts discussing the Sag. So within the iris of Sag, again, we have an Ab Sag Ma Ben of Sag. The first thing we're discussing is the Ab de Sag. Within the Ab de Sag, that's going to be Mitzi iris, which we're going to call the iris of Oizen, Chayim, and Peh. And the emes is that it's also Mitzi other iris of Aznayim also, iris of Einayim also. But the Rav again does not discuss these iris, because this would be the Ab de Sag, if you will, because what we're doing is Oizen, Chayim, and Peh correspond to Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh.
Of Sag.
The inyan of the Ab of Sag.
Right.
So basically, in essence, we can look at the iris of the Aznaim as the Sag, the Ab, the Sag. we can look at the Iris of the Chaitim, which we're going to discuss today, Be'ezus Hashem, as the Ma, the Abdisag, and the Iris of the Peh, which we will discuss in the next year, as the Ben, the Abdisag. And I know this sounds unwieldy, but we have to get used to this because, again, we have the system is always the same, believe it or not. Because once you know the system and once you've boiled it down, you can really take a real reductionist approach to Chachmas Emes, because we're going to see, Be'ezus Hashem, the more we learn, that really everything is saying the same thing but from a different vantage point. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to describe unity. Now, how do you describe unity? Well, you have to look at it from various vantage points, and then you have to come together with all these vantage points and then come together with a coherent picture. That's the pshat that when the Mishnah says in Chagiga that a person has to be a chacham u'mevin medaitot. That's a requirement to understand Ma'aser Merkava. Chachma, remember, is the klal. That's the bechina of like the chaya, because there's no differentiation there. Differentiation only starts in the kli, and that's only a bechina of bina or the mata. So when you're describing something to somebody, when you're teaching someone, you can only by definition teach him bina. You cannot teach him chachma. Now, das is the ability to take the binas, all these different pratim, and put them together. And by putting them together, you can come to the chachma. So, ergo, this person who's learning chachmas emes, in order to get it, he has to be a chacham himself, because he has to be able to take all the bina, which the Rebbe is teaching him, and with his das, he has to be able to put it together to come back to this chachma. If the Talmud does not have this within him, the Rebbe can talk for years and years and years, and the Talmud will learn many pratim, but he'll be missing in the klal. And remember, that's the whole point of Chachmas Emes, is to show the klal. Because remember, Chachmas Emes is the Torah's Atzilus, and Atzilus, we're going to see Be'ezus Hashem parallels Chachma, just like Adam Kadmon parallels Keser. And we're going to see in the other elements, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, parallel the Neshama, the Ruach, and the Nefesh. Okay, that's in terms of the klal. But now when we move right into the prat, we see this again happening. So anyways, so what we discussed is like this. We discussed the iris of the Aznaim, and they are makbil b'chinas neshama, if you will. And there are two nostrils, two ears, from the right ear and the left ear. The right is going to be b'chinas makif, and the left will be b'chinas pnimi. The Rav explains that the way it works is that the right ear is connected something called bina, and the left one is connected something called tfuna. Let me explain. We didn't talk before, but I'll explain it now. Because just like there's a kutshel yud and there's the yud k vav k, which again is our 5-step system, because that's divided up into 5 partsufim, which we call arech, abba, ima, zer, ampim, and nukva, which again is the bechina of the ratzain, the makshava, which is the idea, the hirhor being the plans, and those are all moichen, because those are all not in actualization yet. Even though they're actualization in the head, but they're not actualization yet, right? In the physical yet. And then you have zer ampim, which is kavyochel, the actual pu'ula that's being done, and then you have nukva, which is the sum total of all the pu'ulas. Leis the garmei klum, but the sum total of everything that's coming before that. So those 5 bechinas, those 5 parts of them are makbil, right? The Naran Chai, because the Naran Chai really are those 5 bechinas, just in terms of the Shama, just like Ak and Abiyo, an abbreviation for Adam Kadmon, Atzilus, Brit, Sira, are also makbil those 5. And so the thing is like this. The Iris of the Aznaim, which are the Iris of Neshama, or the Sharish of Neshama, the Shama is makbil Bina, or Ima. Now in Ima you have two madregas. You have a madrega called Bina and a madrega called Tfuna. Madrega Bina is the higher madrega, whereas Tfuna is the madrega which is nichnas b'toicha parts. If that's the part that's going to be mashbia down to the lower oilam. In other words, like in the mashal that we gave of the person who wants to build the house. So the person has an idea to build the house. That's the b'chinas chachma. Now, when he's talking it out with the architect, who is going to be the b'chinas bina over here, he's explaining what exactly he wants in that house and how he wants to build that house. That would be b'chinas of bina, the higher level. But the actual plans, when they're nigmar on paper, that will be the tfuna, because with those plans gufa, that will now be able to give the impetus for the contractor, who's kavyochel here b'chinas zerampim, to go ahead and build that building. So therefore Bina can be looked at as a b'chinas makif vis-a-vis tfuna, which will be b'chinas pnimi. So that's why kavyochel coming out of the right ear will be b'chinas makif, that's b'chinas Bina, whereas coming out of the left ear will be b'chinas tfuna, which is the lower b'china. The Rav explains this in Shar Achap and Perak Aleph. Now, when we move into the iris of the Chaytim, we're moving into the Bechina of Ruach, which is Makbil Zer Ampim. Now, Zer Ampim is the Mashpia, because it's the Mashpia to Malchus. But in the Mashpia Gufa, you're going to have a Mashpia Begadlus and a Mashpia Bekatnus. And we're going to see that. So, let's first read inside, and then I'll explain.
How would that work with the plan of the architect?
I'll explain when we get there. Okay. We're holding on Daf Chav Tes. Here, Taimim Em Soim, Iris HaChaytim. So now the iris are coming out of the Chaytim. Iris Eilu Hema Bechina Hashniya Shal HaTaimim Desak. This is the second Bechina. Vehema Taimim Shebe Emsa Oisis. So the time the Emsa the Ois, or nomenclature-wise, we can describe it as the Ma, the Ab, the Sag. Because again, all the entire Achab system is Ab the Sag, but this is a prat in the Ab the Sag system itself. V'gam kan yotze esher sfir shleimus kolum or pimi v'armakas. Same thing like we had canal the iris oisim, like we had before by the Aznayim. Manekav yamin shalachaytim yotze yud iris makifim, and minanekav smiley from the left nostril yud iris pinimium. Which is pashid iris ha'ela b'chutz ad mukam ha'chazadak, and these are nispash all the way down to the chazad, to the chest. Kaviyachol. Mashain came the iris of the Aznayim only went to the shibolas zakin. We're going to get back to that later. I don't want to go into that point right now, so I'm going to wait till we get to the iris of peh and we'll explain this better. But I do want to explain this bechina of Ormakav and Orpanimi in terms of this, because the Taimim Em Soim, the Bechinas Chaytim, they are the Shroshim for Zer Ampim. Now Zer Ampim is the Mashpia. Now there can be a Mashpia in Gadlus and there can be a Mashpia in Katnus. The Mashpia in Gadlus we call Yisrael. The Mashpia in Katnus we call Yankov. So whenever you see in the Swarm HaKadosh in the Bechinas Yisrael, again that means Mashpia in Gadlus. Remember that. And whenever you see Yankov, that means Mashpia in Katnus. It's not referring to the actual Yaakov and Yisrael, who was the same person who lived. But the truth is, Al Piposh Pshat also in the Chumash, that is the difference between Yaakov Loshen Akev, and Yisrael from Yisrael from Loshen, that he's whatever he is. Sorry, in Kel. So in other words, so it's a higher madrega. The way to understand it is like this. Imagine if, let's say, a person wants to go and make a lot of money. So we'll call that, let's say, Katnus. So therefore, that will be a Bechina of Yaakov. So therefore, everything he's going and he's being poiled right now is Bechinas Yankov. Masha'in Kain, if let's say the person is, let's say he wants to learn a Masechta. So we'll call that godless. So that's the Bechina of Yisrael. So all the dafim he's learning in the Masechta, those are Bechinas Yisrael. Masha'in Kain, all the steps Masha'in Kain, if the person was just going to make money, and we're assuming that we're calling that Katnus for sake of our mashal, that would be Bechinas Yankov. Now, even though it's not the place right now, but I'm going to explain it anyways, we're going to see Bezos Hashem Yisbarach when we get to the Peh, because the Peh is Makbel Malchus, and there's two Malchus, because there's Leah and Rachel. Now again, this is not referring to, there was an actual person, and her name was Leah, and there was an actual person, and her name was Rachel. But when the Zohar Kodesh and when the Swarm HaKadoshim, the Sefer Arizal, refer to Rachel and Leah, they're not referring to the people of Rachel and Leah. They're referring to archetypes, if you will, and Mashalim to explain what the Nook is. The basic difference between Leah and Rachel and this is Kefi the Gra there's a Haggah in the end of the third parak of Sefer Tzniusa, explains that when we're dealing with an interim maskana, that's Bechinas Leah, but when we're dealing with a maskana shemaskana, that's Bechinas Rachel. Let me explain. And remember this, because we're going to have it all the time. L'mashal, let's say the person wants to learn a Masechta. So every daf of the Masechta is another prod in learning the Masechta. So therefore, every daf of the Masechta, we would call that a zivug, or a union, or a yichud, between Yisrael and Leah. It's Yisrael because we're being mashpia godless here, because we're learning Torah. But it's only a Leah because it's not the entire Masechta yet. Now, after you finish the Masechta, Baruch Hashem, you've made it to the end, and you're holding by the siyum now, that will now be a zivug Yisrael and Rachel. Because Rachel will grow and incorporate Leah, and Rachel will be the sum total of all the Leahs that were. So that's Pshat, Yisrael, and Rachel. Sometimes we call it Yisrael and Rachel HaGedolah. The reason why we call it Rachel HaGedolah as opposed to Rachel HaKatana when there's only a Zivik in Yankov. And that Rachel contains within it all the Leahs that were before, because Leah incorporates herself into Rachel at that time. Now, let's take the other mashal. Let's say the person, he has a plan, he wants to make $1 million. So he has to go through many steps till he makes his $1 million. So every step along the way would be a Zivik in Yankov and Leah. Because again, we're talking Shefa Mitzat Katnus, again, because he's making money as opposed to, let's say, learning Torah. And since it's only an interim maskana, so therefore that would be called a Leah. Finally, when he has the $1 million in the bank, that would be the zivik between, or the yichud, or the union between Yaakov and Rachel. Okay? All right, this is very important because we're going to see Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach in the Kavanas that during the week, right, the zivik that occurs during the week is a zivik in Yankov and Rachel. It's a zivik in Katniss, because the zivik that occurs on Shabbos and proper Musaf on Shabbos is a zivik in Yisrael in Rachel HaGadolah, because Shabbos is called Godless copy of the week, which is called Katniss. And we're going to see, because the zivik Yisrael and Rachel is a very big zivik, and it doesn't occur all the time. It occurs during the Moedim and on Shabbos, and only at specific times, as opposed to the zivik Yankov and Rachel, which is more common. Okay, so Stam. So you can have four basic unions, again, between Yisrael and Rachel, or Yisrael and Leah, and you could have Yankov and Rachel and Yankov and Leah. Just remember that.
So these shirashim and achav is what the shorish.
Achav, the achav system are the shirashim for what's going to come later in Atzilus.
Oh, for the partsufim in Atzilus.
Yes, because this is not going to. Because remember, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But what's happening is that the entire achav system are the shirashim for what Atzilus is going to be. Because remember, this is the ab desag system. We're going to see that Atzilus, which is lamata minataber, is made up of ma and ben, because that's what's mislam over there. And ma and ben is going to be a toiloda of the ab and sag, because bekololius ab and sag is bechinas ab and ima, and ab and are mezavik, and they produce ma and ben, which is kololius zer ampim and nukva. So the kololius zer ampim and nukva of adam kadmon make up what we know of as Atzilus. See, there's a perfect example of where when you look mitzad, when you're looking mitzad the klal, this klal being, let's say, Adam Kadmon, all of Atzilus is only the Zayin, or Zer Ampim in Nukva of Adam Kadmon. But if we're going to be looking mitzad the Prat, in this case we're looking at Atzilus mitzad itself, so we see the whole klal there. So within Atzilus Gufa, we're going to have all five parts of Arach, Abba, V'ima, Zer Ampim, and Nukva. So again, mitzad the entire Ak system, Lamata Mina Tabor will be the Vav K of the Shem Havaya. The Achab system will be the K Rishon of the Shem Havaya, and the Ab, which the Rav doesn't want to discuss, will be the Yud of the Shem Havaya. So it comes out all of Atzilus is only a Vav K, but that's of the total system. Masha'inkin, when we isolate the Prat mitzad itself, then we're going to see the whole system again. So therefore we'll see again a Kutz Yud K Vav K mitzad itself.
In Atzilus.
In Atzilus Gufa. And we can do that within any parts of it. We can do that with any Prat. Because again, Lo Ilam Klav Prat Lo Ilam Shavim. It's one of the Yisoides of Erech, and it's one of the Yisoides of the entire system. And it's something we have to understand.
No matter what we're looking at, it's a Havaya.
Yes. Now, so what's happening here is, so the iris are now coming out of the Chaitim. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. Before we finish off the Chaitim and go to the Iris HaPeh, that all these Iris that are coming out of Achab, the Oiz and Chaitim Peh of Achab, the entire Achab system, also we're going to see that the Iris that are coming out of the Einayim, those are the Iris of the Nekudos, and the Iris that are coming out of the Metzach of Achab, that's the Ma'achadosh, or the Miskaloth, that's mentioned in the beginning of Sefer Tzniusa, which Bez Hashem, when we get there, we'll discuss in detail. The emes kulum him bechinas or echad bilvad. The emes, they're really the same or, because there really is no differentiation in the or per se. Elisha or bisrachokay lamad v'penimius ak, as the or travels down, if you will, in the penimius of ak, yis aval lefi merchach ridasai, it thickens as it travels down. So therefore it's obvious, its thickness, if you will, its kli, it's the way it presents itself, will be kifi, the orifice, kaviyachol, that it comes out of. Even though lamaisa, the or is really the same. Ketzan, how does this work? The or from the oizen is the mozach of this system. It's the highest or of this system. When it, as it extends and is nimshach down to the way the choitim is, the yotzim iksasai derech sham. Hinehu mis avi yoser. Let's see, it was charka kamokim bavad. How's the richuk mokim? Vima yes kula or echad shava kanal. Even though it's the same word. Hinal desehu be yoser anfeak, and there'll be the same thing we're going to see in the peh, which will be nisava even more. The emesis, this is what the Rav says, and the emesis, this is very difficult to understand, because if the or is always shava, why should the his pashas of the or make it that it should thicken, if you will, and make it that it becomes more gas? Well, Bekitzer Nimritz, and extremely Bekitzer Nimritz, because the Leshem Shema Vechaloma has many, many pages explaining this. What basically is happening is like this. You have to ask a more basic question. What does Kiruv and Ruchnius mean? Because it can't mean distance, because distance is an attribute of our three-dimensional world that we live in. Like I'm here in New York, and in Eretz Yisrael is 7,000 miles away from me, so therefore I would say that I'm far away from Eretz Yisrael. But in Ruchnis, Richuk and Kiruv doesn't work like that. Richuk and Kiruv is basar, it goes basar doime, meaning if something is similar, then Mamela we would say it's Karev. If something is dissimilar, then we would say there's a Richuk. Okay, derech agav, that's the ankus of Nahamidiki Sufa. The reason why we have to be mashpiyim in order to receive hatova shlema from a Kaddosh Baruch Hu, because if we're makablim, kavyochel, and a Kaddosh Baruch Hu is a noisin, so makabel and a noisin are makasel katsa as far apart as possible. So we would be as far apart from Hashem as could be. So kavyochel, to become doimet to Kaddosh Baruch Hu, we have to ourselves become noisim. So we have to build ourselves kavyochel, and through that we can become closer to Hashem. Okay, but again, we're getting off topic here. But Soif Kol Soif, this is what it means over here. That the Richuk, his Avos Gufa is the Richuk. In other words, if something is something else, how does that make sense? Like much like you have Ein Soif and then Kaviyachol or Ein Soif, which basically is his pashas of the Ein Soif. Even though that doesn't make much sense to think about it, because work of the Ein Sof being his pasha too. But Sof Kol Sof is kind of like saying a marshal, like you have the sun itself, and then you have the or that's in his pasha from the sun. So we would say that or is not the same thing as the sun itself. It's just his pashas. Well, that his pashas is moyer on something else, something different. What happens is, what's really happening here, the Amkus, is that in the Rosh of Ak Gufa, because there is something called the Moichem Stumoim, which Kavyochel, like if you imagine an Adam within his head, would be brains in his head. Within that Moichem Stumoim, there are shroshim for everything that's going to come afterwards, because everything that's Megala on a lower level has to be mushrush at a higher level. So there are shroshim at that point for the Oyers of the Asnaim, the Chaitim, and the Peh. What the Rav is discussing here, the Machaber, B'Shem the Rav is discussing here, is just where the Oyers of the Oyers and Chaitim Peh are Megala themselves. But Avada, higher up, there are shroshim for them, and they have different shroshim. The Mela, so they can be Megal themselves as different Bechinas. So when he says that the Or is Shava, true, the Or Be'etzim is Shava, but the Gili of the Or will be different. And therefore, the way the Gili of the Or is different is because B'Shoirish, it has different places, and the Mela, it manifests itself in different places. So therefore, when we say that the Or of the Oisin, the Asnaim, is different than the Or of the Chaitim, that means because the manifestation of the Or of the Or of the Asnaim is in that place, which we call Asnaim, and the Or of the Chaitim is in that place that we call Chaitim.
The side of the Keli, that's the difference, no?
No, true mitzad the Keli, but the point is, but why is the Keli different?
Right.
So the Keli is different because mitzad Shorish is different. This is not, the Machaber doesn't say this here, but the Leshem explains this at length. Okay. In fact, he bases his entire Sefer Klolim on this principle.
Yeah, but the or in both places are still the same.
No. Yes and no. The or is the same, because or is or. But again, the manifestation of the or is different based on its shorish, which will allow its manifestation to be different.
Right.
Okay, that's what I mean.
But I'm saying it's always any difference is from mitzad the keli, not from the or.
That is very true. So therefore, that is true again. But what allows the keli to be different?
Right.
So I'm explaining
you're
because
saying that the shorish and the shorish is different.
Yes. All right. So that's what he means over here. Okay, we'll stop at this point.